The Simpsons, Season 22, a review. So, advanced warning on this. This isn't really actually so much a review as it is yet another video complaining about The Simpsons' declining quality over the years. This is also part of what I'm calling my television addiction series, in which I go back and talk about all the TV shows I watched in 2011 and 2012 when I was watching way too many DVD sets because I was living in Cambodia. For more information on what this series is and why I'm doing it, you can check out the link in the description down below. Okay, I'm going to get a little bit long-winded on this because why not? So advanced warning if you don't want to watch this. But let's talk about The Simpsons. I'm one of those people who's old enough to remember when The Simpsons was a new show. So I was in 6th grade when it aired, when the first season aired, and I remember what a big hit this was on the playground, the subsequent cultural phenomenon that came with it, you know, the Simpsons video game, Simpsons music, the CDs, the merchandise, etc. Although in my opinion, the first season wasn't really all that great. And in fact, even when I was in 6th grade, I wasn't a huge fan of the first season. But then The Simpsons hit its golden age, the 3rd, 4th, 5th season, in which it was just absolutely fantastic television. And I was right at the perfect age to appreciate that, around 14, 15, 16. I remember the feeling of watching an episode of The Simpsons and just knowing, as soon as you saw that logo come on the screen, or as soon as the episode began, you just knew you were in for a fantastic half hour of entertainment. I also remember being a college freshman in the year 1996, and all living in the dormitories and everyone just watching The Simpsons, especially on the boys' half of the dormitory. I went to a conservative Christian college, so there was a girls' dormitory and a boys' dormitory. It wasn't like one of these mixed dormitories like some of these more modern schools. And on the boys' half of the dormitory, whenever The Simpsons was being aired, you could walk down the dormitory halls and you could just hear it being in room after room after room. So you'd be walking down the halls and you could see The Simpsons being watched in this room, in this room, in this room. This was back in the days when people actually paid attention to the schedule of television. And Simpsons was on peak saturation back then. Fox used to show it twice in my neck of the woods. So it would be aired at like 5:30 and then they aired again at 6:30. They were really rerunning a lot of The Simpsons in the late 90s. And then the Canadian broadcasting system, which we also got access to, had it on at 4 o'clock. So there were many people I knew, most of the boys' dormitory, who would schedule their evening so that they could watch all 3 episodes of The Simpsons. And this was before it had like a major DVD release and all that kind of stuff. So people were just watching what they could watch when it was on TV. It was not, for whatever reason, not as popular on the girls' side of the dormitory. And you know, even at my school, we could go over to the girls' side of the dormitory during certain approved hours, the open house hours. In the girls' dormitory, they didn't love The Simpsons quite as much, if at all. Of course, I'm making generalizations here about sex, which might get me into trouble. Sex meaning gender in this case. But that definitely was my impression. And I've talked to females over the years trying to figure out why males so love Simpsons and why the females didn't. You know, because it's not the obvious stuff, right? I mean, the obvious thing is that males love violence and women love romance or something. And The Simpsons wasn't violent, but I guess whatever it was a male's sense of humor. And maybe more of a teenage male's sense of humor, but we really loved it. And if you're my age, you'll remember these years. We watched it so much that we could quote it all the time, and we did quote it all the time. There would be situations in your normal everyday life when you'd remember a Simpsons episode that which is applicable, or a Simpsons quote. And we were constantly, back in the late 90s, exchanging Simpsons quotes to each other. The AV Club, the website that does film and television review, once, this was years ago, but this has stuck in my memory, the writers once referred to people roughly my age as the Simpsons generation. People who were teenagers during that heyday of when The Simpsons was at its peak quality, and just absorbed all those episodes and had them memorized, and would always refer to them in conversation with each other. I remember in the late 90s talking to some of my college friends about whether or not it was time to end The Simpsons. For example, I used to have one friend in particular. We had a running debate going. This was about, I think, 1999. He was of the opinion that The Simpsons was declining in quality and they should just cancel it before the show ruined itself. I was of the opinion that, yes, the show was declining in quality, but why cancel it? You know, it was less funny than it used to be, but it was still funny. It was hit and miss, but they still had the hits sometimes. Well, why not just keep it going? I mean, no harm in keeping it going, right? If a few more episodes each season are subpar, no harm in that. But the point being, I guess, that even back in the late 90s, people were already saying that The Simpsons show isn't quite what it used to be, and maybe they should just cancel it. If we had only known back then, if me and my friend had only known back then that The Simpsons would keep going and going and going, and here we are now in 2021, with a 32nd season on its way. But I'm getting ahead of myself. I left the U.S. to go abroad in 2001 and have been, with some breaks, pretty much abroad ever since, teaching English in various countries. And one of the things, when I left the U.S. to go abroad in 2001 to go to Japan, one of the things that I was most upset about missing out on was the next season of The Simpsons. And of course, back in these days, there weren't a lot of videos on the internet. Back in those days, there weren't a lot of videos on the internet. It was much harder to stream stuff. So I was just largely out of the loop. I was kind of relying on my friends to email me, tell me if there were any good Simpsons episodes. And then when I was back visiting that summer, I was trying to catch up on Simpsons episodes on TV, but it was just, I was more or less out of the loop for quite a few years until video became popular on the internet. And then you could find various streaming websites where you could watch various TV shows, usually illegally, and usually they would get shut down and then another one would pop up. And, you know, over the past 20 years, there have been all sorts of these shows. People old enough to remember will remember all the different sites that used to be up and then got shut down, TV links, and then there was different sites and stuff like that. But the point being, even though different sites got shut down at different periods in time, there's always some site you could go to catch up on all the TV you've been missing out on. And I caught up on The Simpsons that I had been missing during those years. Somewhat hit and miss because it was a large backlog to completely catch up on. But I caught up on quite a bit of it. And there was no denying that throughout the 2000s, the quality was not what it used to be in the 1990s. But it was always a reliable way to pleasantly waste time. You know, it wasn't as good as it had been in the 1990s, but you know, you could put it on, you could turn your mind off, you could enjoy yourself watching it. And that had been pretty much my image of The Simpsons throughout most of the early 2000s. And then in 2011, or I guess 2012, I got from a DVD store in Cambodia The Simpsons season 22 and started to work my way through the episodes and just found myself getting so bored. And then I didn't even finish season 22. And that, to me, was when I stopped watching The Simpsons. I mean, it had been touch and go for years before that, mostly because of circumstance. But at that point, I just realized, okay, there's no point in watching this anymore. It's boring. And, I know people have been saying it hasn't been of its peak quality for years, and that's true. I thought it had always been watchable until I got to season 22, and then I thought, okay, this is not watchable anymore. Fascinating to think it's still been on the air, though. And in fact, season 22 was now 10 years ago, and it's still on the air. I read somewhere online again, maybe this was the AV Club again, I don't remember where, and this again was years ago, but some reviewer said, you and all the people you know have stopped watching The Simpsons years ago, but somebody must be still watching it because Fox is still airing it. So who is still watching it? I don't know. I mean, I guess ordinarily in these circumstances you'd say, well, the old people, they're the ones keeping network TV alive or something like that. But the old people aren't the people who like The Simpsons, right? I mean, people my parents' generation hated The Simpsons. That was a huge generation gap when The Simpsons first came out in the 90s. I mean, it's largely people my age who grew up with it, but we're not watching The Simpsons, are we? We're at a stage in our life now when we're way too busy to catch up with subpar TV. Is it young kids who are still watching it? I don't know. Who's still watching The Simpsons? But yeah, they still keep cranking it out. But season 22 was when I gave up. For a while, I was still trying to catch the Halloween episodes because, the Halloween episodes were always so exciting back in the 90s. But then I saw a few more Halloween episodes. I'm like, this is boring. It's just everything about it, I think, has been boring for the past 10 or 12 years. And yet they still keep making more episodes. A brief addendum to this. During the same time, I was also watching some other animated shows. Futurama, Family Guy, American Dad, South Park. This is all part of my television addiction during those 2011, 2012 years. Family Guy as well has declined in quality. Family Guy never really had that much of a long run. It had like 2 really good seasons, and then everything after that has been a decline. But I still found Family Guy watchable. At least I did back in 2011, 2012. Same with Futurama and American Dad. South Park, though, on the other hand, South Park, well, I haven't seen the recent seasons. So again, I'm going back a few years to 2011 to 2012. But I was really impressed by how inventive South Park was. Now, I'm hesitant to praise it too much because the politics of South Park are famously contrarian, and there's a number of political statements that those guys make that I don't agree with. But in terms of artistically or ambitiously, they were just always doing so much inventive stuff, so many crazy storylines, so much imagination going on, very ambitious seasons, some of which worked, some of which didn't. But yeah, those South Park guys, it's amazing that they still have so many fresh ideas after so many years doing this. You'd think they would have burned out a long time ago like those other shows did. And again, I haven't seen the latest season. Since I moved here to Vietnam in 2015, I haven't been able to catch up on South Park. But from 2011 to 2015, when I was living in Cambodia and was catching up on South Park via the pirated DVDs there, it just never failed to impress me how they kept coming up with new ideas. Unfortunately, the same is not true with The Simpsons, though. But let me know what your experience was. When exactly did you stop watching The Simpsons? Do you remember the moment when you gave up on the show? And who is still watching it? Why are they still making new episodes?